Hello friends, today we are going to discuss the case Mahavir Prasad versus Jagram. Let's first understand this case in brief. In this case, Mahavir Prasad, his mother Gunvanti Devi and his wife Saroj Devi were leases of a property. They filed a suit for the recovery of outstanding rent amounting to rupees 61,750. The subordinate court dismissed the execution application, holding that the decree was not executable under the provisions of the Delhi Land Reforms Act 1954. Mahavir Prasad alone filed an appeal before the High Court, making Gunvanti Devi and Saroj Devi respondents. However, Saroj Devi passed away during the proceedings and her legal representatives were not brought on record within the prescribed limitation period. The High Court dismissed the appeal on this ground. The Supreme Court, while interpreting Order 41 Rule 4 of the Civil Procedure Code (CPC), held that when an appeal is based on a common ground applicable to multiple parties, the appellate court has the power to decide on behalf of all affected parties, even if they are not formal appellants. Furthermore, if a deceased party's legal representatives is already on record in another capacity, the proceedings will not be vitiated merely due to the absence of a formal substitution application. On this basis, the Supreme Court set aside the High Court's order and allowed the appeal. Now let's study this case in detail. Answer: Appellant Sri Mahavir Prasad versus Respondent Sri Jagram. Reference AIR 1971 SC 742. Case summary. Under 41 Rule 4 of the Civil Procedure Code, an appellate court can decide an appeal filed by one party for all affected parties, even if they are not formal parties to the appeal. If a party dies and their legal heir is already on record, the proceeding will not be interrupted. Facts of the case: Sri Mahavir Prasad, his mother Srimati Gunvanti Devi and his wife Srimati Saroj Devi, collectively referred to as the plaintiffs, were tenants of certain property and held ownership rights over it. Trial court. The plaintiffs filed a suit before the subordinate judge, First Class Delhi, seeking a decree for the recovery of rupees 61,750 as rent payable by the defendants. The defendants argued that the decree was unenforceable due to the provisions of the Delhi Land Reforms Act 1954. Accepting this argument, the subordinate judge dismissed the execution application. High Court. Sri Mahavir Prasad alone appealed against this order and made Srimati Gunvanti Devi and Srimati Saroj Devi respondents. In November 1962, Srimati Saroj Devi passed away and Sri Mahavir Prasad applied to remove her name from the list of respondents. The High Court dismissed the appeal, stating that the Srimati Saroj Devi's legal heirs and representatives were not brought on record within the limitation period prescribed under the Limitation Act, leading to the complete abandonment of the appeal. The High Court held that the power of an appellate court under Order 41 Rule 4 of the Civil Procedure Code is applicable only in cases where a common issue arises for more than one person. If an appeal is filed by one or some of the affected parties but not all, and the others are not made parties to the appeal, the provision does not allow appellate intervention. Supreme Court. An appeal was preferred against this order with the certificate granted by the High Court. In this case, one of the defendants had died, but their legal heirs were not brought on record. When an appeal is filed by one of the multiple interested parties and the decree is based on a common issue affecting all of them, the appellate court has the authority to pass an appropriate decree. This power is not nullified simply because a jointly interested party was made a respondent and upon their death their legal heirs were not substituted in the records. Under Order 41, Rule 4, the appellate court has the power to modify or amend a decree of the subordinate court when the appeal is filed by a party against whom the decree was passed on a common ground. This power can be exercised even if other parties against whom the decree was passed on the same ground were not made. Parties to the appeal were named only as respondents, hence the view taken by the High Courts cannot be sustained. Additionally, as Sri Mahavir Prasad was one of the legal heirs of Srimati Saroj Devi, the appeal cannot be deemed invalid merely because no formal application was made to sue him as her legal representative. If a party to the proceedings dies and one of their legal representatives is already on record in another capacity, it is only necessary to describe them as a legal heir through an appropriate application. Even if other legal heirs are not brought on record within the limitation period, the proceeding will not abate. Therefore, the High Court's order cannot be upheld on this ground either. Decision: the appeal is allowed, the case is remanded to the High Court for rehearing and settlement in accordance with the law. Legal principles established. In this case, the Supreme Court established the following legal principles. Point A. If multiple parties are involved in a case based on a common issue, the appellate court can review the entire decree even if only one of them files an appeal. Point B. The presence of all parties in an appeal is not mandatory if the case is based on a common ground. Point C. If a party to the appeal dies and their legal heir is already on record in another capacity, a simple formal application is sufficient to designate them as a legal heir. Point D. If all legal heirs of a deceased party are not brought on record but the appellant himself is one of them, the proceeding will not abate. Point E. The appellate court has the authority to modify the decree even if other affected parties are not formally present in the appeal as long as the issue is common. Point F. Court have a duty to ensure that no party is deprived of justice due to a technical error. Point G. The power of the appellate court under Order 41, Rule 4 of the Civil Procedure Code are broad and should be applied in fair and just manner. Please watch full video, share and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.